And then the fifth one is the election 24 that we are putting focus on. This means that this is not only national focus, but this works from the state to the local. So it puts a lot of onus on us in chapters to be able to cover various different ways of these different focuses within our chapters. So our first one, of course, is the lobby team from a national standpoint. And you can see the names listed there, Kelly and Kathy and Patty from Grand Haven. They all they said that they don't have anything to report. The meeting is usually done on a quarterly basis, and it was done in March. And so they reported at the March meeting. Our next meeting, part of them being connected with Representative Skolton, will be in DC at the meeting at the conference there. So
Hey,
Kelly,
Jan.
to correct on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say I could just provide a brief overview of our meeting in March because
Sure.
we actually met after our chapter meeting.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 5 of us met with Hillary Skolton's district director at the end of March, and this was a little bit more of an informal meeting. The directive from CCL National was that we do a drop-off of some sort. So we gathered a bunch of different materials and resources from our chapter here and from CCL National, and we brought cookies. But we sat down for longer than we expected, and we had a good conversation with her district director. It was primarily about carbon pricing generally. She had a lot of questions and didn't have a whole lot of background with it. So I think it was a good introduction for her to our chapter, and we followed up with a bunch of other resources and have some other touch points with them to continue to maintain the relationship.
Thanks much, Kelly, for doing that and giving that report. Okay, the next screen. So the second part to our lobby team is the state focus. And John Constantine is the one that does that. He is traveling. And right now, the big push, and I'm going to have a little bit more on this, is the community solar bill. That is a bipartisan bill. And John reported on this to us at our March meeting on the detail. And what we are asking people to do is to write letters to your senator, your state senator, and or the committee chair to show support on this bill. CCL is strongly behind this because it is bipartisan, and this is something we do need in Michigan. And there is more, there is a link in the chat for information on it, plus a link on try to find, if you don't know your state representative or senator, you can find it in the link too in the chat. So next screen. This is an example. You could take a photo of this on your phone if you want to, if you've got a big enough screen. From a laptop standpoint, just an example of the letter that we would like you to send. The Holland chapter actually put this together. We're going to be distributing these kinds of letters to be signed and everything at the tabling event on Saturday in Grand Haven. But it tells you the exact number for the Senate bills, 152 and 153, and that we're supporting the senators who were bipartisan that put this together for community solar. This is a big deal for us, and we need to get this passed. So, okay, next screen. Okay, this is starting our team. The first part of the teams were the lobby part, which I pointed out, both national and state. The next team is grassroots. This team is made up of 4 different committees. The first one listed there is the tabling committee. There are 3 people that are part of that table committee. And I put a little bit more detail, and you'll see even another announcement on this. But on Saturday, We have Grand Haven Earth Day event. This is something that Grand Rapids is always participated in as a chapter. And now the Holland chapter is participating, of course, because Grand Haven's with us, they are also part of it. And it's a big event put on and sponsored by Sierra Club. And it begins with a parade down the streets of Grand Haven, and then with tabling from 1 to 4 in the community center. It's a great time to walk around and see all the various organizations that are tabling there, have pass outs, and you learn a great deal. This place you have, one of the organizations provides lunch, and it's just a fun time, plus to meet other CCLers who are there. We are short on people from Grand Rapids in being able to do this event. Lots of things going on Saturday, and people are very busy. If you want to go or are interested, please put in the chat. I do have empty car. I'm willing to make arrangements to carpool it if, well, ever. So next one is EJ Committee. Dolly, you've been having several events. You want to report?
Sure. First of all, I hope people have noticed that we have an article in the newsletter, and we are doing profiles on organizations and individuals that are working on environmental issues and environmental justice issues in Western Michigan. And as a committee, we have been really enjoying doing those interviews and getting to know people better in other organizations. And I hope you're enjoying reading the article that we're putting together. We are looking at doing a can drive for the Gun Lake tribe, and that will help support their powwow that they'll be doing in July, I believe. You'll be hearing more about that in the future. We've also been investigating several different possible tours to go on in the next few months, and you will be seeing those. We're really excited about several of them. And then the thing that's going to be happening, I think most soon, will be we are going to be working with C4 on a pocket forest in Boston Square. There's a church there that has set aside space, and there are some trees there already, but we're going to be planting more green things there. And that is going to be on the 28th, the Sunday from 1 to 4. I am going to put a link in the chat, so you will be able to sign up.
Okay, thank you, Dolly. The Climate Action Program Committee, Carolyn, has young children. She had events tonight that she could not be present, but she is now ahead of this this committee. And I'm going to have another screen to show you what the action is this month, and the fact that you just got an email from Brett Cease about the focus on having a climate conversation. But I will talk about that in a couple of screens. Activation Committee, David, anything to say?
I'd like to say thanks, Jan. You are a partner in this, and we're going to have our next activation onboarding event. We kind of combined the two on May 5th at 2 o'clock Sunday. That'll be at my house, and we already have 5 people who have said they're going to attend. So it's looking good for the May 5th event.
Okay, good. And we have some of these announcements, we have another screen so you can see it again. Grass Tops is coming up. We only meet on a quarterly basis. It's based on other activities within the team that people are working on, and then it's sort of reporting and talking. So we try to set it around the noon hour because some of our people have a work schedule. And you are free to come and observe and visit and decide whether this would be a team that you would be interested in any of the areas that we cover. Just put in the chat that you would like me to send you a link to attend because it is Zoom. People from Holland and Grand Haven often come too, and so we just report in and have interesting conversation for an hour about what Grass Tops does. So next screen. The media is one of our fourth team, and David, I know you may not have anything to say about this. The media is made up into two segments. One is broadcasting and publication. Anything, David, at all on this one?
A little bit discouraging news. I have a great idea for a segment on TV, and I did approach the meteorologists twice to pitch it, and they have not responded. So I'm afraid maybe the meteorologist angle has run its course. We're scheduled to meet in May. And I'm certainly going to try to do that, but it hasn't been robust in the last few months.
Okay. All right. But you keep working on it. David's full of great ideas. So I know you'll come up with something else that you guys can focus on. So, and how to go about it. So social media, you can see what we're on: X, Facebook, Instagram, and we have several people that do post on that. We always need someone that may want to help out, especially Facebook. For some reason, that doesn't seem to be as popular. But if posting that you're interested in that, it means posting something that's climate related from that standpoint. And we would look forward to having you join that part of the team. Okay, next screen. Chapter development. This is really our administrative part team. It's chapter development and volunteer development. And the steering committee is the heart of it. It is all our co-leads and co-liaisons. We meet once a month, normally on the last Monday of the month, and by Zoom. And we are the ones that kind of keep track of what's happening in the chapter and what's going on. Because as co-leads, all the co-leads are either a team leader or a committee leader or something like that. And so they're reporting in, and we talk about what's happening and what's coming up and strategies on direction. Program committee, we've scheduled all the way through 24. For new people, we are program based. And what I mean by that is that we have a program every month connected with the meeting. And this is our last Zoom meeting until September. All the next meetings will be outside, hopefully. The weather will be cooperative, and we'll be having events in that way. And you will be hearing about having announcements at the event, but it won't be quite different than having these Zoom meetings. But everything's scheduled all the way through 2024. Program meets probably quarterly, maybe less than that, whenever, how much, depending on how much we can get done. And we will be looking at 2025 scheduling in the next time we meet. Onboarding, David has already talked about this. Onboarding for new members is also kind of combined with activation of something that David has been focused on for the last few times that we've been doing it. So the next one is Sunday, May 5th, 2 p.m. All of those who are new, unless you were not on my list, you should have an invite out there. We'll be sending out the details from David's address. If you didn't get something, please put it in the chat. So we aren't missing you. We want to make sure you have an invite to this event. We try to have them almost monthly, depending on how many people can attend, that kind of thing. So communications, this makes up a newsletter, and a big thanks to this committee. Let me tell you, Chris is on vacation. You guys, that's a capital V. She has been responsible for the newsletter for several years, and she's been responsible for the IT stuff. The fact that she can take a vacation is fantastic. And there are people now, we have, Chris, Dennis and Deanne and Julie all participating and helping out with the newsletter, and other people helping out with articles that they're committing that Dolly was talking about from the EJ standpoint. It has made a world of a difference for Chris. And plus the fact that Deanne, thank you for Deanne to come in and be able to do these screens for our meetings when we have these Zoom meetings. So big thanks for everybody that's involved in that. And the treasure part, John Constantine takes care of it. We just want to thank you all who have donated. Kelly was responsible in helping set up the PayPal, Venmo part, so now people can do it online. And thank you, because we were having some budgetary. We don't usually ask for money, National does fund drive quarterly basis, but we were down on, and we have several expenses that we've been trying to cover, and that's the reason why we went out there and asked for money. So thank you. Next screen. All right. As before, lots of announcements, but I broke this up into 2 segments as numbers. So 1 through 4, all is this weekend, okay? And I'm sure we aren't covering some things that really are happening, but we're covering what we know about, okay? So I've already talked about the Lakeshore Day, Earth Day celebration, which is at Grand Haven, and near the courthouse steps. Then it's easy to find. It's right across from the park for the parade part of it that starts at 12:30. And then the community building is just on the opposite side of the park, and that's where all the major activity happens from 1 to 4. Neighborhood cleanup is happening in Boston Square Association from 9 to 12. Now, the Rockford Sustainability Group is having their recycled foam, e-waste, metal, plastic drop-off. This is really good time. I usually try to participate in this. They do this quarterly. And if you have any of those kinds of things, and there's the address for you at 239 North Flint Drive in Rockford. And then another Earth Day celebration happening at Rockford Brewing Company on Sunday from 3 to 6. So that's the first things for this weekend. Of course, I understand there's some other Earth Day events happening, one at the zoo and one at down at the Riverside Park. So there's lots of things to go to this weekend. Next weekend, Earth Day beach cleanup in Grand Haven on Saturday from 10 to 12. And Friends of the Grand Rapids Arbor Fest are doing a tree planting event on Saturday from 9 to 12 at MLK Park, that's on Franklin. And they are planting trees within the neighborhood area. And then this is the number 7, help plant a pocket forest, is what Dolly has already brought up. That is in cooperation with C4. It's on the Sunday, April 28th from 1 to 4 at the Boston Square Church. So that's a very interesting program with this pocket forest that is happening across the country. It is also, Ann Arbor has one that they've already done, and there's several others, I think probably in Michigan, that are happening. So this is kind of cool that we have one in here in Grand Rapids and that C4 is involved. And the last one is the focus on what our next meeting is. It's going to be in Grand Haven. It's the Old Grove Forest Walk. It's on the 16th. We're always the 3rd Thursday of the month, and it's starting early at 5:45. This is done through the city of Grand Haven and the Duncan Park area of this old growth. It should be very interesting. We're honoring and trying to keep interconnections for the Grand Haven chapter involved. And this was an event we set up several months ago. So it should be very interesting. And we will have more details in the newsletter about it, and anybody that wants to kind of carpool over there. So watch that last line, watch for the newsletter for upcoming events in May. All right, a lot of that. Sorry, a lot of talking on that part. Okay, next screen. All right, this is now, some of you know that we have a postcard writing that has been initiated by, actually on a national basis, through the Environmental Voter Project. And what they stand for is to reach out to people who call themselves environmentalists but don't vote. And usually they have a calling system, a phone calling system, which they do. And it's very strong and it continues throughout the year, encouraging people to vote. Now they have this postcard thing. And in Michigan, we have signed up as CCLers to help sponsor writing postcards. Well, I happen to have them. They came in the mail. The box is sitting on my desk. And we are ready to now meet the goals of what we set. So our state goal is 8,560 postcards by the primary, the August primary. So they have to be sent by July 16th. And this is an example of a very simple message that we would like to have people write. And then we have a list of all the addresses of the numbers of people. There's about 10,000 people known in Michigan who qualify as environmental people that claim that they're environmental but have not had a voting record. So why I put this up here was not only the fact that we are going to be doing this at our tabling events that are coming up, but before that July 16th deadline to get them out in the mail, but any of you who have faith groups that maybe want to take on this, or other organizations, our students that are involved at GVSU and other colleges may want to take on trying to collect a few of these postcards and handwritten notes, and the ones, especially for people that are able to sponsor a group of note cards, we are asking you to at least just pay for the postage. So you have 10 of them, it will cost you $5 because postage, they're 53 cents a post, I think. So this is a really big push. You can see we've got a big goal to accomplish. That is, of course, statewide with of the chapters that we have with CCL. All right, next screen. Conference, this is a biggie. Our national conference is coming up. It's always the same time of the year, the second weekend of June. This is a wonderful experience to really have an in-depth into what CCL does, to have the experience of lobbying on the Hill with, last time I think we approached 1,000 of us CCLers on Tuesday. In 2019, there was 1,100, 1,200 of us on the Hill. So it's a large number of people. People are trained in what we have to do, and you have plenty of coaching before we do it. And it's just a really good experience. We have several people that are going. If you're interested on more information, just put it in the chat in regards to this, and or the registering is right there to the site that to register and the dates. Okay, next screen. I'm going to run a little bit behind my 7 o'clock time period, but this is a photograph of Carolyn's daughter walking along the side of the river. And I don't know if you can see in the background is a burned out forest. They just returned from a trip to California, both with their kids and another family that joined them. And she said it was an intense conversation with the children, especially the older children. They wanted to know, why are these forests burned? And they got into this explanation about climate change and about the heat and about the disease of the trees and that kind of thing. And she said it was upsetting to the children, but they really wanted to know, what is this? And she said that this was her example of, particularly with the friends that they were with and of having a climate conversation. And that's our focus in the next 30, 60 days with CCL. And some of you may know of Catherine Hayhoe, who started this with her book, Saving Us, that the most important thing we can do is have the conversation with our friends, with our family. But now we want to register and log those conversations, which often we have not done in the past. And so we are going to start logging them. And next screen. Now, mind you, Carolyn has already logged that conversation she had with her kids and her family, her friends. So far, we only have 14 members of our chapter that have logged their climate conversations. I'm sure many of you are having conversations or have thought about having conversations, but logging was not the thing we've been doing. So today you received an email from Brett Cease called CCL Programs. And in that email is a link that all you have to do is click on, takes you right to the logging of the action tracker to log the conversation. Now, if you've had some conversations in the last week or two, go ahead and log them. You just have to put the date in, that's all. And the other way to go is to right on our national site of citizensclimatelobby.org to community, then to action tracker and to log action. Much easier to go in the email that is from Brett Cease and click on the action point and log in your conversation. And let's try to increase our numbers. I know that I had conversations with my family out in California, And it's kind of an ongoing thing that people, of course, you can imagine those of you that know me, I have conversations all the time. So to try to log in what I've been talking about. So, okay, that's the big push this month besides the state push for community solar on our actions. Next screen. Well, we are fortunate tonight to have one of our members, Will Gallmeyer, to talk about becoming an electrifier. And along with Nancy Morales, which they have been having a conversation in regards to an evaluation on how you do this. Will, I'm assuming you're here. I can't see by this screen if you are, but
Hello.
you are good. Thanks. I'm going to let you take over from this point, and if there's anything that Deanne has to do for you, she's already made you co-host, so I think that should be okay.
Okay, good.
All right.
Well, thanks for being here, everyone. Sorry I look like a ghost in this lighting. I'm a regular human, kind of. So I am a self-appointed electrification coach. I've been in this industry in energy efficiency and more recently in electrification for about 10 years. I got my start. How did I start? I worked for Habitat for Humanity right out of college in Tacoma, Washington. And back then they were doing like Kent County Habitat, they were doing some good work with air sealing and insulation, and they were doing blower door tests. Show of hands, who knows what a blower door test is? Okay, like half. So a blower door test is how you depressurize a home to see where the leaks are coming from and how leaky it is. And so it's an important part of weatherization. And as I'll get into a little bit, weatherization is an important precursor to electrification. So from there, I did some biking. I lived abroad. I worked at a newspaper in Turkey, and then I came home and I flipped a house with my dad. Didn't know weatherization or air sealing. Did a terrible job. Don't tell anybody. But I didn't know yet. So after that, I worked for Dr. Energy Saver, which was a franchise. I think it's still a national franchise. Hey, Nancy. And they had an office in Lansing, and that one's now defunct. But anyway, they basically productized air sealing and insulation services and made it kind of a gimmicky sales pitch. And it was cheesy, but I learned a lot about air sealing and insulation. And after that, I went to work for the utility rebate programs. If you're not aware, both your gas and your electrical utility offer rebates for various different energy efficiency improvements. That has been required by the Michigan Public Service Commission since about 2008. So they sub it out to these third-party contractors to implement those programs. And so I worked my way up in those programs, learning about kind of the finances of it, learning about the technology, learning about LEDs. And then about 5 years ago, I realized that I'm just not fit to work for others because I have some kind of an authority complex or something. And so I struck out on my own as Green Projects Group, and I've been much happier ever since. And that's the end of my TED Talk. So what I did at that point is I borrowed a lot of ideas from other people. So one of the biggest ideas that I borrowed over the last 5 years was this idea for a free light bulb program. A coworker in like 2016 pointed out that there was a financial margin between the rebate for an LED light bulb and what you could buy one for. So I started going door to door when I struck out on my own with a pallet of light bulbs in the back of my truck, knocking on doors in Holland, and handing out light bulbs in exchange for an autograph, which would authorize the utility to pay me for the light bulbs. And that worked. And I was also doing commercial lighting. Then COVID hit, and I had to put it online because I didn't think anybody was going to open their door for me, and I didn't really want to get sick. So I put it online, and then it started to expand. We added another utility and another utility, and over the next few years, we were doing this for 18 different utilities across Michigan, and I learned a lot about program management and even more about the utility rebate programs. So so that brings us up until like a couple of years ago, really. And the conversation has been about, as I'm sure you've all known from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it had been about energy efficiency, right? Using less energy, weatherization and Air sealing and insulation. Those are very important topics. Well, there is a new topic, electrification. And once I heard about this, I heard probably from Brett Little at Green Home Institute, um, that we need to stop using machines that burn natural gas point blank, because we have to rely on fuel sources that can be green. So we have to have only electric machines heating our homes, cooling our homes, and heating our water, and driving our cars, of course. Um, so could I get a show of hands? I'm just curious, who has an EV or a hybrid vehicle? Wow. Holy smokes. Okay, good job. Who has done any weatherization, air sealing, or insulation in their home? I see you, Roger. Good job. Who has a heat pump water heater? Who has solar? Okay, very cool. So these are all different components of the electrification journey. As the conversation has shifted away from energy efficiency, which is still very important, but towards electrification, I've embraced it wholeheartedly, and I was maybe tilting at windmills a little bit in the last couple of years, because it looks like the state and the nation at large has also come to terms with this notion that we need a concierge service, or we need like a handholder for people to get from point A, which is whatever kind of situation they're living in with whatever appliances and whatever vehicle, to fully electrified. But I just took it as my personal mission to figure out a market-based way to provide this service to people, and I'm still working on it. And I might not have to perfect it, because I think the state is going to be looking for electrification coaches, essentially. So I'm going to share my screen and walk you guys through a couple things. Does anybody have any initial questions about the things that I've done, or why I'm so weird, or anything like that? Okay, I'll just share my screen. Okay. So you can see a big blue screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. So just by way of background, this is my company. This website had been mostly dedicated to the free light bulb program that I mentioned for a few years. And I am just a nonstop tinkerer. So I've started referring people to Energy Sage, and they pay me a small commission. So that's the solar thing. We do Home Energy 101, which is a really cool program in Holland that I won't get into too much. And then electrification is kind of the main thing that's been replacing the free light bulb program. So what is electrification? Basically stopping using natural gas and gasoline in your cars. Here's a little graphic I put together of the journey and what it could look like. I wrote a little ebook, and we've been hosting monthly meetups called Electrify West Michigan. I'll show you that one right now, actually. So we recently looked at an all-electric apartment. We learned how to ride the bus. We went to a power plant. We rode e-bikes. We test drove Teslas. We visited Volta, which is electrifying RVs in Holland. And then the first three we had were just sort of like coffee dates, just get together to chat, kind of a thing. I think I'm actually going to skip this. I'll just say that basically 42% of America's carbon footprint problem could be solved by residential or point source emissions being switched to all electric. And a lot of this work is being done by Saul Griffith and his nonprofit called Rewiring America. Here's a very pretty chart that he used to figure out that 42%. Where does all our energy come from, and what sectors does it go to? And here's Rewiring America. They estimate that we could save about $1,800 per year on average by going to an electric heat pump for heating and cooling, a heat pump water heater, electric vehicle, and solar. So that's pretty good. A lot of the work that they publish and a lot of this conversation, from what I've learned about communicating energy efficiency information to people, is about finding, and I think you guys, we talk about it, GRCC and CCL. People don't want to be browbeat about environmentalism. We need to find ways to communicate this information that has to do with indoor air quality, financial savings, onshoring jobs, onshoring energy, national security. These are sort of more universal themes. Around the time that I was learning about that, I met this nice guy from New Orleans named Matt Candler, who was doing a course that I pretty much borrowed for my electrification coaching. I like to borrow things. So we taught a course together. And I think a few of you were there. This was maybe like 2 years ago now. And he's pivoted a little bit more to vehicles, and that's really cool, and it's part of it. But I thought his original template was very good. And so I took it. And this is more or less what he had put together. It was in a different software. But this is Trello. And so this is kind of the backbone of the coaching service that I put together. And I have over here a to-do list in the first column. And then the subsequent columns are, say, this week, this year, next year, this decade, done. And then the last one is back burner, like I don't really care about it, or already done. And so all these cards can be dragged and dropped to when you want to accomplish it. And if you open them up, we'll look at electrical service here. There is a header on top, which I borrowed from Rewiring America and retooled it for my own purposes to show you the estimated lifespan of this device or service, whether or not an electrical upgrade is required, the upfront cost. Sometimes it varies hugely, as you can see here. And actually, this could even be $7,000 if you get a smart panel. Annual savings, difficulty, percentage of home emissions that this will affect, whether or not it improves indoor air quality, and whether or not a renter controls it. There's a picture of the device or service, a description of what it is, a little more information on costs because it can be more varied than the initial number in the top. The top 3 questions to ask, so this probably isn't quite zoomed in enough. This one says, how many amps do you have? How many amps are you using, or how many watts are you using, as the case may be? We convert to watts because those are easier to think about. How much do you want to electrify in the next 3 years? And here's a bonus question. Are you an energy nerd, or do you just want the things to work? And then a lot of people want to know, should I do this first? Stephen, is your hand up for a question, or is that just left over from my question and answer thing? Okay. People want to know, should I do this first? So here I wrote, get a smart panel if you only have 100 amps and you don't want to upgrade your service and you are going to electrify absolutely everything, including your vehicle. Also consider this if you love data and you want real-time monitoring and control from your phone. So this is a smart panel, which is like the next generation of panels. This has a little purple label on it, which means it's a service. You'll have to engage with a contractor. The other ones that just have green mean it's a product that you purchase. So it could be easier, although not necessarily cheaper. I mean, a new EV is not an insignificant expense, but it's true that you just have to go buy it. Incidentally, I'll click on electric car here. Rewiring estimates that your vehicle is responsible for 50% of your emissions. So switching to an EV is hugely important. So what we do in the coaching service usually takes 3 to 5 meetings. The first one we'll kind of go through a little PowerPoint that I'd be happy to show you if it's relevant, although I'm not sure it's too helpful. I'd kind of rather just do like a back and forth in a few minutes. And then we can jump right into the meat of it here, and I can give people a few minutes to set this up on their own. If they want to do it live, I could just, take my headphones off and they can have some privacy while they think about it, or this could be homework. And I encourage people to do something cheap or free and ideally fun in the first week to get some momentum going. And then 1 or 2 things the first year, because a lot of these projects are complicated and they require, being at home to meet with a contractor and that kind of a thing. Next year, again, 1 to 2 things. This decade basically will round out the other 3 or 4 projects that you feel really passionate about. And then everything else, in my opinion, should go on the back burner. I don't want to overwhelm people. Here's Nancy's. Oh, wait, is this Nancy's? No, it's not. Sorry. Let's get Nancy's up.
So can you zoom in to make it a little
Yeah.
bit larger or
Yeah.
not?
let's see.
Out, whatever is appropriate.
Does that help?
That's great.
Okay. So, let me open up. Let me just look at all your faces again for a second. I just want to see if anybody has any questions or any hands raised. Or is this kind of making sense so far? Okay. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Nancy. Would you mind talking about your top couple goals here? What you've already done, and maybe how you found the coaching to be helpful or not.
Yeah. So something that I've already done is to get solar panels on my roof. I actually got them installed last November, but they actually just went live last week. So that was very exciting, even though it was a very long wait. And I will say that I jumped the gun on that a little bit, so I didn't get the best deal I could have. I'm in so much debt. But like Will, for example, has some examples of like sources and places where you could get solar panels for either a little bit cheaper or just like in a way that's probably more efficient or like a better supplier. So I do have that. One thing that I've found really helpful with being coached by Will is the fact that, you know, trying to go electric is like a really big kind of technical job. And as someone who is an art major and, you know, not an engineer or, you know, house construction person, this was something that would be a lot more challenging for me to navigate on my own. So it's been really great just having him there for kind of like good next steps or even just ideas for things. Like for example, I wouldn't really have known about like the portable storage or like heat pumps I learned about like very recently too, but didn't really understand like how they worked. So it's just been great having like the guidance and also the fact that this is like a long-term thing, right? I'm a poor millennial, so obviously I'm not like dripping in diamonds, but it's nice that I can like kind of break things down into little like reachable pieces and goals that feel very achievable. So it's nice to have things to do now and then also things to do in the future and like the long term. So thanks, Will.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me and talking electrification. Another sort of set of resources that I have, I just keep in Google Drive folder. And there we go. So, and I came up with silly names for them. I'm not sure that it's been that helpful for anybody, but I called the nervous system your panel. And so what we do in a nutshell, hang on, I'm gonna look at this one first. We take your amps, which you probably have 100 amps, maybe 150 amps or 200 amps sometimes. And we multiply it by 220 volts and we get how many watts you have to play with. And this is an important exercise to go through towards the beginning because it will give us a sense for how much we have to do before we upgrade your panel and whether or not you really want to push for some of those stretch goals or if like 80% is good enough for you. And this is from Nate the House Whisperer, by the way. He runs a Facebook page called Electrify Everything. He's very passionate about this. He's like testified to the DOE and advised on things. But he's really just a contractor. Like he's just a guy who talks about this all the time. And here's a list of some of the typical wattages that you'll see from some appliances. So the big ones that we need to keep an eye on are if you get a heat pump, you might feel compelled to get backup resistance heat, which is like a giant baseboard heater that's also connected to your ducts right at the same location where your heat pump is inside. If you're really worried about having enough heat for that like one February day where it's difficult for your heat pump to keep up, because even in cold temps, a cold climate heat pump will have to run pretty much 24/7. If you're not willing to risk a 67-degree day in your house when you have the thermostat set at 68, then you might want to get backup resistance heat. But that could spike your wattage here to consuming 20,000 watts, which is quite a lot. An EV charger can similarly use a huge amount. So a lot of electrification is about figuring out ways to use electricity more efficiently mostly through heat pumps, and also figuring out, part of our lives in the future are probably going to be, how do we not run all our appliances at the same time? Because with natural gas, it doesn't really matter. Like the gas just keeps coming. But with electricity, you have a fixed amount. So we have a little worksheet that we can go through here, and we'll add it up for your house and figure out what percentage of your total watts you're using and whether or not you can achieve your goals. We have, I'm not going to get into the pocketbook yet because that one's crazy. We have a spot for meeting notes, which I'll put every time we meet. I'll have a coaching recap with a link to your Google Drive, which I called the brain, and your Trello board, which I called the brawn, and every one of the topic areas that are on my little Wheel of Fortune that I can show you in a minute. And we also have space here for quotes or audits that you might get that would be helpful for me to see too. You can upload those here. The electrification journey, in many cases, could start with weatherization. It's important to reduce the amount of electricity or energy that you're using overall before we try to go all electric. So even before that, you're probably going to want to start with an energy audit, and that will run a blower door test, help identify sources of leakage, find recommended areas in your home where you can do air sealing and add more insulation. And something like the Department of Energy's Home Energy Score will also give you tips for, I'm pretty sure I'm still working on that certification, but I think they'll give you tips for the best bang for your buck appliances to electrify. Moving around to 1 o'clock, you might consider a smart panel or just a panel upgrade based on the watts calculator that we just talked about. I sprinkled in a few fun ones at 2 and 3 o'clock. Cooking is something we do every day. It connects us to our families, our cultures. It makes us happy. It tastes good. So try cooking with a $75 countertop induction stove if you're not willing to go all the way to a full-blown, $1,000, $2,000 induction. Micro-mobility. I incidentally started an e-bike company a few weeks ago. So if you check out West Michigan e-bikes, wmebikes.com. But I put this here before I planned on ADDing out on another new business. Bikes are fun. They get us to where we need to go. A huge percentage of our trips are within a couple miles of your home. So consider an e-bike if you're not in the habit of biking. Of course, we already talked about cars. A bunch of you have EVs already. That's great. Water heaters. If you're thinking about electrifying, you should do a heat pump water heater, a tanked heat pump water heater. They're very, very efficient. They sip about 1/10 of the energy of a typical electrical water heater. And they can even be used in advanced applications like time of use. So you would turn it up a little bit in the wintertime before the high afternoon pricing from Consumers Energy, and then turn it down. But you don't have to do anything really that sophisticated. The whole point of all these appliances is that they should make our lives as easy as their gas counterparts. So if you just set it and forget it, it'll work fine. Lawn tools, our electric lawn tools are amazing. Ooh, I want to do another show of hands. Show of hands if you have an electric lawnmower. Show of hands if you have a gas lawn. Oh, David, shame on you. I'm surprised. Just kidding. So they're not as noisy. They don't smell as bad. Go ahead.
I only mow my lawn 3 times a year.
Okay, okay. All right, you're excused. They're really fun. They're just amazing. So those are very cool. HVAC, we're going to recommend switching to a heat pump, which is, okay, actually, another show of hands. Raise your hand if you're really not exactly sure what a heat pump is or how it works. Okay, great. So I can explain it really quickly because they're amazing. So a heat pump is like an air conditioner that also works in reverse. So whereas an air conditioner typically sort of absorbs units of heat from inside your home in the summertime and dumps them outside, a heat pump can reverse the flow of that refrigerant. And even though it's cold outside in the wintertime to our human bodies, in sort of cosmic terms, there's a lot of heat energy outside in the wintertime. And these refrigerants can absorb units of heat and then bring them inside and put them into your house. So they're not producing heat, they're just moving it. And as such, they use a tiny motor to just run this refrigerant around in a loop. And they can actually get more units of heat energy than the units of energy that go into them. And so heat pumps can be over 100% efficient. In fact, they routinely run between 200 and 300% efficient on average, and they can run up to 400% in certain conditions. And that doesn't mean that they're borrowing energy, that they're breaking the laws of physics. It just means that they're taking electrical energy and turning it into heat energy, which is a less concentrated form, and they're doing that with a greater than 100% efficiency. Any questions on heat pumps? Next at 8 o'clock is clothes drying. This is actually one of the few ones that I don't really harp on for people. Heat pump dryers do exist and they're very cool, but they're pretty expensive. And I'm just not sure that it's a very practical ROI for most people. I actually have a little decision tree that I put together, and I'd be happy to send it to you if you're interested. But only if you're a completionist and you're not really too concerned about money, I think, should you get a heat pump dryer. Solar, I put towards the end because you want to, in general, and this isn't always the case, but it's helpful to know how much electricity you're going to be using on an annual basis before you invest in solar power. Lighting is something that I've been doing for the better part of a decade, and it was an afterthought. That could really happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be at 10 o'clock. Indoor air quality at 11. This is sort of a trick one because it should really be at the beginning of your journey and the end of your journey, although there's a lot fewer concerns for indoor air quality problems if you don't have any natural gas appliances. So ideally, if your home is not too tight, you shouldn't have any indoor air quality concerns after going all electric. So this is just a possible rubric. Folks don't have to go exactly from 12 o'clock around to or 11. But this is one way to think about it. And then I actually wrote this back when I was still cooking up all these ideas. So most of it's pretty true, but we have in-person classes and meetups, community of like-minded people who get together once a month to talk about electrification, and other cool stuff. And then, yeah, I just think all this stuff is cool. So I want to talk to you guys about all of it. I'm going to briefly show you the pocketbook because this is the hang up for a lot of people, right? Like, how much is it going to cost? So before I open anything, I just want to say that this is not easy. I've been studying it for like 2.5 years and I still don't fully understand it. But suffice it to say, there are basically two programs. They're through the IRA, which was a landmark piece of legislation passed to get us going more energy efficient and all electric. There's a federal tax credit program, which is live. It's been live since last year, and you can get 30% back on solar, heat pumps, and heat pump water heaters up to $2,000. And then there are forthcoming programs which will be rolled out by the states that will take one of two pathways depending on your income. For the most part, folks who are considered income qualified or below 80% of the area median income will get point of sale rebates at a big box store where they're buying a new appliance. And other folks will go through like an energy audit and work with a contractor to figure out exactly how much energy they saved in order to get their rebates. I'm not sure that this has been totally helpful to anybody yet. So this is kind of like early days, but this is the way that my brain collated a bunch of PDFs that I found online to figure out how much energy or how much money you could get back through the various different programs. So over here we have 2 hypothetical years, what you're going to do in
Increase it
2024.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, just a little.
Let's see if this will get us. Yeah.
Better, yes.
So some of this funding is capped annually, so it might make sense for us to like spread out some projects. So you might not want to do your heat pump water heater, and the building envelope, which is another way of saying your ceiling and insulation, all in the same year. And we can pencil that out depending on what your interests are. Furthermore, for some of these programs, it's important to figure out how much you spend on labor and how much you spend on materials. So let's just say this was like $2,000 and $2,000. We would go over here, and if you sort of hover, there's like an explanation of what you need to know about whether or not you qualify for this assistance. So if you're below 200% of the federal poverty line, you're eligible for the weatherization assistance program, which will get you up to $82.50 to fully cover cost-effective energy conservation measures. If you are below, I think this is a typo, I think that's supposed to say below 80% of the area median income, you can get 100% of the costs covered up to certain limits for various different things. And I've got other PDFs to show you what those are. Homes and HERA, these are all the state-based programs. Homes will take one of two different pathways. It will either be based on an energy model, or it will be measured on a 12-month basis of exactly how much energy you saved. So we can play it out. What's Michigan going to decide to do is still yet to be seen. Although I've heard through the grapevine that they will be asking us to measure our energy savings 12 months later. 25C tax credits are the federal credits that I mentioned. And then, of course, we've got utility rebates from consumers and ETE over here in Grand Rapids. I'm going to pause here because that was a lot. Any questions on this? There's something in the chat. For lawnmowers, what is wrong with a simple push mower rather than electric or gas mower? Oh, that's a fantastic way to go. I've tried one and I had a kind of grass because I don't keep my lawn up very well. That was too tough to be cut by a push mower. But if it works for you, absolutely do that. Nancy wants some links. Which ones were those? Are you still here, Nancy? Brenda says, can you do a heat pump to cool without completely going with heating as well? We need air conditioning, but hoping we can go with the heat pump and then gradually shift over to add the heating down the road. Yes, absolutely. You might be a good candidate for what's called a hybrid system, which is a lot like what you described. There are heat pumps that are not cold climate heat pumps. They're much less expensive upfront, and they can warm your home down to 20 or 30 degrees. And your contractor will just recommend a set point at which you'll switch back over to your natural gas furnace. And you'll probably do 100% of your cooling with the heat pump, which is going to be more efficient than your air conditioner is, almost guaranteed, because they're super cool machines. And you'll do a bunch of your heating with the heat pump as well, but you don't have to worry about those super cold days. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out one more time, and then I think that's the end of my presentation. As I said, tilting at windmills, trying to figure out a way to make this something that could be available to the market. I had devised a scheme whereby ideally this service would be paid for by utilities. I have some relationships with them. None of that really panned out. It seems to be like too far ahead of its time. I also had a component where I was going to charge commissions to the contractors that I recommend people to. And actually that could still be viable. But again, it seems like the state might be paying electrification coaches to do this. Another way that this could go is I could just be a general contractor where I go and I do your energy audit and I pick the contractors and I tell you the pricing and I add 10% or whatever. And then you don't have to learn all this stuff because this is for somebody who really wants to, be in it and know everything about what's going on in their home. So those are all things that are just continually evolving. I'll just say, like, personally for my business, I've just ended up working a lot with the city of Holland and Holland BPW. They're very forward thinking. even though they weren't quite ready for electrification coaching, they do have a really nice Home Energy 101 program, which they hope to build up into Home Energy 201 and 301. And eventually they might offer some electrification coaching services like this, because they're an electric company. So it just stands to reason that they want people to use more electricity.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So have you done any work with people who live in condo complexes?
A little bit, actually. Yes.
So the question in the sense of doing like a heat pump and having to have external venting, and of course, most condo complexes, you can't do anything with external structures. Did you come across anything like that?
A heat pump will have a single penetration just like any air conditioner.
Even like an air conditioner?
So
there
I really don't
shouldn't be a problem then.
I don't see why that would be a problem. The things that could be a problem would be air sealing and insulation, although since that affects your bills, I would think that it should be within your rights to weatherize your home. But the one that's a real problem is solar. And I think there's some legislation that's been proposed at the state level to forbid homeowners associations from banning solar, kind of a ban on the ban type thing. And Rick Fryman from Kalamazoo is working on that, or is privy to that conversation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Questions, comments, Carrie? I have to leave. Enjoy the information. Thank you, Carrie.
So what are your fees for coaching?
I haven't fully decided yet. I've been doing it for free, which is not a good business model.
Yeah, but
And
it's because you're so passionate.
yeah, honestly, I think based on the amount of time that I put into it, the minimum fee to get somebody from soup to nuts would be something like $800.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons that it probably makes more sense to just wrap this into like a regular general contracting service. I
Mhm.
would charge a lot more because your average complete energy efficiency, electrification, and solar project is going to cost $50,000. So I think a lot of contractors charge a 20% management fee. If I even charge just 10%, I'd make $5,000. So, and I just think the pain of that is a lot less than saying like, I'm going to coach you through it. A lot of
Yeah.
people have been very curious about it, but it's not, the market's not going crazy for this service. So I think it makes a lot more sense as just like I'll just manage the project for you kind of a thing.
Right. I get that. Great.
Does anybody have a personal story about any of these topics that seems relevant or germane? Was it hard to do anything? Have you tried to do anything that didn't work? Did your EV surprise you when you got it? Do you love producing your own clean energy with your own solar panels? Any thoughts or comments on any of those things?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to hear about someone's solar panel experience because that
David,
kind of intimidates me to do it. So
what's intimidating about it?
just the cost and get the right people to do it. And, I've had a lot of problems with my house lately. Water heater, well water, just a lot of stuff, mold in the basement, not horrible mold, not toxic, but, so yeah, so then to start a new project and, something like panels, I've thought about that for a long time, but I haven't done it. And then you put all this money into this house, say you keep doing projects, and then you move, just from a purely financial standpoint, are there new owners, new buyers that don't want to take that on? I mean, what's the market like in real estate for buying houses that have renovations made for electrification?
Yeah, great questions. David, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I went ahead and couple of things that you mentioned I've run into. For example, I went ahead and bought the solar panels, and at that time there was a 1% cap, and they wouldn't allow me to put in more panels than I produced. So they had to figure out how much power I use every year, and then they asked me to keep it below that. One of the things that I've run into recently is that the company that installed my panels is now out of business. And I don't know, I've gotten some messages from Solar Edge about, the thing that lets you see how your panels are doing. And they're saying that they're upgrading to 5G, and I have to contact my provider. I don't know how to do that because there's no more company anymore. So actually I was going to ask you, Will, for your advice on what to do about that. I also want to say that Will did come to my house and we did have this discussion. And if any of you are considering doing this, I highly recommend getting Will to help you. He's very good. And but the model, the business model is an issue. I haven't paid Will yet. So we have to figure out how to do that. That's, I guess, what I have to say.
Maybe I could also add on. I installed solar panels about 7 years ago, a 4.2 kilowatt potential. My annual production is about plus or minus 4 megawatts. And last year, I keep a spreadsheet of all of my production as well as my bills. And my total consumer bill last year, total for the whole year, was about $18. So that gives you some idea of the saving that I have. Now, with regard to putting it on, because I have it, if I were to sell the house, I think it would easily up the value of the house, and I would recover that. I think solar is, in fact, rooftop solar, I think is a good way to go. This morning, the Grand Rapids Press had an article about solar farms, and they were talking about the difficulties of that. And I'm thinking, why isn't there more of a push and support for rooftop solar when there's so much space on top of that? And you're also, even though I'm connected to the grid, it's also still local production. So you don't have all of the grid work that you have with a huge solar farm that we're talking about. And the press talked about about the discussions in the Ann Arbor area, Washington County. Anyway, that's my feedback on the solar panels.
Great.
That over the last few years, I have a son and daughter that live in New Mexico. And a few years ago, I funded my son to put it on his house. They get a lot more sun than we do. He has 2 more panels than I do, but his annual production is about double what mine is because of all the sun that he has. So I think I'm still doing my thing by the overall national reduction of power plants by supporting solar panels elsewhere.
Great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is there maintenance with solar panels, and do they ever need repairs? What does that look like?
In my 7 years or so, once my inverter panel went blank, and they replaced it. It was still within kind of a warranty, so I didn't have to pay for it. That's
Okay.
the problem that I've had.
Okay.
I found last year, one thing that was unexpected to me, there was an awful lot of pollen. And it was coming from the trees around my house, and it was covering the panels, and it was reducing their efficiency. So I think I have to go up there and mop them off because they were there was quite a film, a yellow film over them that was impacting how well they produced.
That makes sense.
Last summer, I also found it interesting because of all of the smoke we were getting from the fires in Canada. My production during sometimes the whole month or during that whole period was down maybe 10 to 20%. Last week with the solar eclipse, even though we're not total, it was still interesting. I could see it on my daily production. It went down almost to zero during that eclipse when it was about 80%. That was just kind of a fun thing for me to look at.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Aaron Newman, what do you got?
Hey folks, so I actually happen to be a realtor to work with solar panels on occasion, mainly with other realtors in the area to try and help value them appropriately. The biggest issues that tend to come out of it is the buyer's lender's appraiser when they look at solar panels on a home. So just typically most of the time it gets looked at the point of the sale, or the value of the home is looked at the point of the sale. With solar panels, you kind of have to project utility costs over 8 to 10 years to get a payback period for those solar panels, or exactly how much savings you'll get out of that system. So there's slight miscommunications with appraisers, and a lot with the IRA is actually
Mhm.
prompting a lot of appraisers, or at least individuals who have been advocating for this work for decades. It's giving them more of a say of how to exactly attribute the value to the home. So, like, just with utilities and escalating gas prices is a clear example they like to use. But to trim it up, just make sure when you are going through the selling process of your home with solar, make sure buyers and appraisers that come to your home understand what energy load your home will have and what the solar panels produce.
Okay. Great.
Something else I've heard about with regards to reselling a weatherized or electrified or solarized home is the Pearl certification
Yes.
is very helpful. That it's hard to sort of just vouch for your own house, because I mean, yeah, it's great, and they
Yeah.
can only sort of take your word for so much. But if you have a third party verification, it can boost the home value by like 3 to 5%. I think they did a national study to come up with a number that it's not nothing, and it should cover the cost of some of these upgrades when you go to sell, or compensate you
And
for your
that's
investment.
exactly it. It's about trying to part out these features and aspects to the values they provide. So with solar, that is a more direct comparison between your energy load, your expected production, and ultimately the utility cost savings, with overall building seal improvements that is hard to judge and clarify. So having those third party certifications help the banks attribute that value to that home and be able to justify the price in their appraisal.
Okay.
I have a question for David. David, what did you say you had to mop off your panels?
Holland.
Holland. Oh, interesting. Okay, good to know. Maybe hopefully I could just hold it down. We'll see. Like, pretty steep.
Yeah, don't fall off, David.
No, it's not so bad where the panels are, and I just get a hose and hose them off.
Sure.
I guess, and I've been told that everyone can always hear the crying baby when my mic is on, so I apologize for that. But she's being taken care of. I guess the only other thing I really want to highlight is that people come at this for a wide variety of reasons. Like Nancy wanted to give as few of her dollars as possible to consumers' energy, and that produces a different strategy from somebody who wants to be entirely self-sufficient or off the grid, or somebody who's looking strictly at this for like an ROI. that could even go as extreme as like, well, they're just going to compare it to what they could get with the money by investing in. Other folks are really worried about indoor air quality. Other folks, like many of you probably, are environmentalists, and they understand that there are some things within their control that they could do to reduce their carbon footprint. And it really does add up. I mean, like I said, when I heard that number, 42% of America's carbon problem has to do with residential machines and personal vehicles. It all just clicked into place for me. Like, this is a hugely important thing for me to invest my time into figuring out and helping other people understand and helping them navigate this journey. So
Will, are you someone that can do an energy audit for me, or who do I go for that? Go to for that?
Great question. Not, yeah, I mean, I would love to just talk you through. I have done a lot of energy audits, energy education sessions, estimating, costs back when I was a salesman for the insulation company. I do recommend the Department of Energy Home Energy Score, which comes in the form of they call it a miles per gallon, but I don't really see how that makes sense because it's a 1 to 10 scale. So 10 would be the best. I guess that's the most miles per gallon. 1 is the worst. And when you get a home energy score audit, they will come up with a certain set of recommendations that are considered reasonable to have a good ROI or whatever. And they'll tell you, if you do these things, you'll go from a 4 to a 7 or whatever. And so I'm working on finishing that one. It includes a blower door test, which is a piece of equipment that I would have to invest in. But if you already, like, you've been living in your house, you probably have a good sense for like if there's comfort issues in this room or that room. And just looking at like your vaulted ceiling there, I could have some guesses about what's going on in your home.
Is that good or bad?
It could just mean that sort of that like knee wall
Yeah.
at the other side, they probably didn't use any rigid insulation on that, and so it's
Great.
probably, yeah. So just I know a really
I'm
great guy
flunking
actually.
already.
Well, it's about improvement. So I know a great contractor from Lansing that I'd be happy to recommend to you. I'll drop my email in
Okay.
here, and he doesn't usually or even often do an energy audit because he's just done thousands of homes, and so he's just going to look in your home and he's probably going to say the top 2 most important things to do, and things that he does almost every time, is to air seal and insulate the attic floor and air seal and insulate the rim joist, which is where the top of your basement wall meets the first floor joists.
So those things are more like, I thought you'd for sure say windows. Like I noticed some draftiness in these windows. So that's
Yeah.
not the top 2. I mean, not that I know anything, but I thought that would be one of the top things would be the windows.
Yeah, window marketing is really good. Windows are probably the worst ROI.
Okay.
You could caulk them, or if you're feeling really enthusiastic, you could pull off the trim and do some spray foam and then put the
Yeah,
trim back on.
I'm not feeling that
Who
enthusiastic.
is? Who is? This is
I mean,
dirty, annoying work.
it's air. It gives me air.
Yeah. So honestly, just some caulk would be fine. Most of the problem with windows is associated with the box that they're in and not the window itself. So
Ah,
just caulking to make sure that no air comes through the little gaps in the framing is going to be great.
okay, I have a totally separate question related to your e-bike
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
My son-in-law is totally into them. He
Uh-huh.
always looks for used ones, a good deal. He tries to always, thrift and buy used. And do you actually sell them, or do you just teach people about the efficiency of them?
So I'm assembling them and selling them. I happened to meet this guy who started this
Cool.
business and offered to coach me in how to do it for a really low fee. And I was like, I just love starting businesses and I love bikes. I've biked across the country and
Cool.
it's been a long time. So I'm kind of an e-bike guy now. I'm like a 2-girl dad e-bike, taking it easy kind of.
Sure.
So
Do you do any used ones well, they're already assembled, right? Do you repair any used ones and sell those?
these are brand new, and I haven't done anything like that yet.
Okay.
But it's early days that could come to pass.
Okay. I might give him your info. He might just want to
Yeah, just come test ride some.
talk to you and just pick your brain about stuff.
Sure. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Aaron, did you have another one, or is that left over?
No,
I think
left over.
that's
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Okay, did we have anything else in the chat that we didn't cover, or any other questions? Well,
That was it.
no.
The
Okay.
biggest hurdle is finding contractors who are willing to do this work. And so whether I end up doing this as a coach or a representative of the state or as a general contractor, a really important part of the service is just finding the HVAC guys who are comfortable with heat pumps and are not going to try and talk people out of them. Find solar contractors who have reasonable pricing. Find plumbers who know what a heat pump water heater is and
I like
are
Nancy's comment.
comfortable with them.
I'm with
Yeah.
that.
Having more dispensable income makes this really cool, which is why it's important to participate in statewide conversations about the cost of all this, which I'm also do. There's a couple of really good work groups through the Michigan Public Service Commission, and there are a lot of people trying diligently to figure out how to make this affordable.
Do you see the overall costs for efficiency and electrification coming down eventually as more and more people do it? Like that's
Yeah.
typically how things go.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for some of these, we're even, the technology curve of adoption, there's a chasm between the early adopters and between the innovators and the early adopters or whatever they're called.
Okay.
We're like almost still there for cold climate heat pumps. Like they work fine, but not a lot of people have them. So when we're producing these by the millions and tens of millions, I think the costs will continue to come down.
Great.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody questions? Thank you, Will. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you for your time and
Yes.
attention. Appreciate it.
We have Will's, information, and certainly helpful to know, even as limited as some of us may have. So just having somebody to be able to walk through with it with us and that kind of thing that we can trust. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. I appreciate all of you coming tonight and attending, and those who are new to CCL. Certainly, and just remember, our next big event is going to be in Grand Haven to walk through the old growth forest, and really should be interesting. So it will start early. So if you're on a work schedule or whatever, maybe grab something to eat before or after. Maybe some of us will even meet afterwards and be able to talk about it. But there'll be an expert on talking about the old growth and there to answer all the questions and that kind of thing. So it should be a good event. And each month, like I said, up to September, we'll be having it. So August, we always have our picnic, and it's going to be at Wilcox Park this year in August. So, okay. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend. Try to pick up some of those activities that are happening. There's lots happening. So hope you can see them in the following weekend too. Okay.
Thanks,
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
and thank you for your patience with me. Bye.
Yep. Thanks.